Welcome to TestFlix. This is George Ukkuru. Today, I'm here to talk about how usage analytics can improve end user experience. So, before we get into the details, let's actually take a look at why is it important to analyze usage behavior. So, as testers, one of the common problems that I've seen in the industry is basically like we rarely look at what has actually happened to an application after it has actually moved into production. So we rarely go and look at how many tickets have been logged by the support teams because of bugs. We don't actually go and look at what is that your customers are talking about in social media about the app that we have tested. Nor we primarily go and look at the availability of your application in production. But there's wealth of information that you can actually extract from various sources, and that information can be used in order to improve the overall quality of your app. So today we are actually going to take a look at specifically the topic around usage behavior or usage analysis is a specific topic that we have picked for today's session. So, and let's actually look at the top 5 areas that you can actually concentrate on when it comes to usage behavior analysis. The first one is basically the features as well as the pages in the website that are actually used by my customers. So there might be like hundreds of features in your application, but there might be specific features, maybe like top 20 features that my customers are actually using very frequently. So can I actually get insights around those kind of features or those features or workflows within my app that are actually commonly used by my customers? Or forget about workflows or features, it can be even pages that are commonly accessed by my end customers. The second area that you can actually look at is basically, are the customers able to use my app for the need for which it was actually developed? For example, if I'm having an e-commerce app, are customers able to make a purchase in the e-commerce app within the specified timelines? For example, are they able to complete the task on time? Are they able to complete the task without having any kind of errors? So that's the second area that I should be actually bothered about. The third one is, are there specific areas within my workflows or specific points within my workflows where the users are actually having problems and then they're dropping out? So it can be like the customer, an e-commerce customer is basically searching for a product, and then he's not able to apply the filter in the right manner, on the right way, and he's actually finding it difficult to use the app, and then he's actually logging out or closing the browser. And the fourth area is basically like, as you know, there are multiple browsers, device combinations, resolutions that on which your app needs to be tested. But are customers using the same kind of resolutions, browsers, and devices that I'm using for my testing? That's another piece of information that you can actually extract from the production logs as well as from the application tools, monitoring tools that are available. And then the fifth area is basically, how stable is my app? Is my app giving performance issues? What is the overall availability of my app? Are customers getting runtime errors or exceptions when he or she is using the app or the website? So these are maybe like top 5 areas that you can actually concentrate on in order to generate analytics around usage behavior. Now, if you look at this, the information that you need to capture from an application that's already there in production can be classified into two different buckets or categories. The first one is around, how are customers accessing my application? So in very simple terms, are my customers accessing my website from a mobile device or from a desktop-based browser? Or what kind of resolutions or screen resolutions are my customers using when they're trying to access my website? So these are mostly related to the how part, on how the app is being used by my customers, or how the app is accessed by my customer. The next one is basically, what are customers doing within my app, in the sense like what kind of pages are they navigating to, what kind of workflows are they using within my website or native app. So that's the second area of interest where we can actually generate insights as well as improve the way we do testing. So if you look at the first part, which is basically from where the customers are actually coming into my website or how they're accessing my website, there are a lot of information that you can actually extract from it. The first one is basically like your website can be accessed from a web browser, which is actually available in a desktop, or it can be from a mobile device, an Android or an iOS device. So in this example, you can actually see that 84% of my customers are actually coming in from my Android device or from Android devices, which indicates that when I'm actually doing testing for my app, I should be actually doing more testing on Android, because my desktop-based users count is very less. Even if you compare with iOS, it's only like iOS is only 11%, and the web is even lesser than that, maybe like 3% or 4%. So when I'm actually testing my website, this actually gives me an insight that I should be actually doing more testing on my Android devices. Now, the second chart that is being displayed is actually talking about the number of users that are actually coming into my website every minute, which actually gives me a fair idea on the average user load that might exist within my website on typical normal conditions. And then if you're observing it for a longer duration, you may also get what can be my peak workload based on what is there in production. The third piece of information is basically there are multiple operating systems from where I can actually access my website. It can be an Android, iOS, it can be Linux machine, it can be a Mac machine, or from a Chrome operating system. So I'll also get an insight around like what is the operating system from where I should be actually performing my testing based on what my customer is doing currently. And then you also get a split of devices or split of information around, or you get a lot of information around platform, which is again dependent on like how many of my users are actually accessing the website from a desktop, tablet, as well as from a mobile device. And then if you're dealing with a website, you will also be interested to know what kind of browser versions are my customers using when I'm actually using the app, in terms of, am I using a Chrome browser? Am I using a Safari browser, a Firefox, or an Edge browser? In this case, majority of my users are on Chrome. So there's no point in me executing all the test cases in maybe something like a UC browser, where I will have maybe like less than 1% of my users coming in. And then you also get insights around screen resolutions, which will actually help me to do maybe any kind of compatibility test around screen resolutions or form factors. So, but that is not just this piece of information that you get. There's only maybe like 10% of what they can actually get from a tool like Google Analytics, or maybe from any kind of application performance monitoring kind of a tool. So how is the information going to be useful is basically you can actually prioritize your testing based on devices, browsers, operating systems, or device models. So all of those things can be actually done by using this kind of insights that you can actually gather about your application. So if I'm actually defining a strategy for risk-based testing, the standard way of doing risk-based testing is based on assumptions that my customers will be using a Chrome browser or a UC browser for when they're actually accessing their website. But this is very different. Even if you are applying a risk-based testing approach here, the testing is primarily going to be done based on how the customers have actually used the application in the past, which is more realistic. So this actually gives you a better quality product. At the same time, it actually helps you to reduce the overall cost of testing, because you're actually doing a prioritization of devices rather than testing for everything. Now, there's a second piece of information that will be very helpful when it comes to customer journeys. So there can be a lot of workflows within your application, and it might not be possible to test all permutation combinations of a workflow. For example, if I'm dealing with an e-commerce website, my customer would actually log in. He or she can actually go to the home page, search for a product. He or she can actually add a product to the cart, then go back and search another product. And then finally, they may decide to actually do a checkout and then make payments. And then you finally get the order placed. Or I can log into the website, I can just search for a product. And then I'm going to buy a single product now. I'll just go and do a buy immediately rather than actually adding further items or additional items to my cart. So there can be or I can actually log into the website. I just do some search and then close the browser. So there can be a lot of workflows that can be actually generated and these for the workflows can have multiple steps. And the customer is having the flexibility of deciding what steps he or she might pick on when they are in the website. So a customer journey analytics kind of a tool, for example, a good tool is basically maybe the user flow engine that comes in with Azure Application Insight that gets you a view of what are the commonly used workflows within my application. And this piece of information is very useful to decide the workflows that you should be actually testing from a regression or an end-to-end testing standpoint, because this is how your customers are using your app. And when you're actually doing a regression testing for the future builds or the future releases, you should be actually using this kind of insight or this insight to actually determine what are the maybe like top 10 or 15 workflows that actually do use for my regression testing. So this is a very valuable information to determine the workflows as well as the customer journeys that are very important within my app, because that is what my customers are actually going to use when I'm actually going to deploy this application into production. So there are two things that we saw. One is basically the environment from where the customers are actually using the app. And then second piece of information that we saw was basically how is that customers are playing around with the app, or how is that they're actually using my app or website to actually complete their task or achieve their goals. But how is it going to be useful from a testing standpoint is, one is definitely I'm actually aligning my testing more closely or very closely with what is happening in production with my customers. So definitely, if you're actually redefining your test strategy based on the environment that the customer is using, based on the workflows that the customers are using the most, you can actually improve the overall experience or the overall quality of your application. Second thing is, you're not actually testing for everything. You're actually prioritizing your testing based on what your customers are doing. That actually helps you to bring down the overall effort as well as cost of testing. And the third important thing is basically you're actually doing this analysis. You can actually do it in real time or even offline. But if you're actually doing this analysis very frequently, you can actually find out specific pain points of your customers. It can be like you have a workflow where customers are actually finding it difficult to do the next step because they're actually confused with the screen design or the overall usability of your app. So you can actually find out problems or symptoms of a problem upfront, and you can actually find a proactive solution to it before it actually gets reported as a ticket. So since you're able to find these problems upfront, you can actually fix them without much of an effort, rather than actually having a scenario where a customers are actually reporting a problem to the customer help desk, and then you're actually having a support team getting engaged, and then finally you have developers and testers doing testing of this fix. Rather than that, you can actually fix the problems when you actually start observing them upfront. So that actually also helps you to reduce the overall cost of quality or the cost of rework. So these are some of the benefits that you can actually reap by actually analyzing the customer usage patterns. And I'm hoping that you'll get an opportunity to implement this in your future projects as well. Thank you for listening in. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now. Thank you.